G9 Defense 9mm+P, external hollow point, and Woodsman. So these are completely two different styles of G9 ammo with different solid copper bullets. One is our 80 grain external hollow point. That's kind of similar to like an Extreme Defender type bullet. It's supposed to do damage with those flutes. And then we have our Woodsman, which is a 124 grain, and it's kind of an interesting button nose style solid copper bullet. That's going to kind of be similar to like Extreme Penetrator or Hardcast or something like that. So that one's meant for, you know, dangerous animal defense. So it's meant for a lot of penetration, as where the external hollow point is meant to not penetrate that far and then cause a lot of damage. So our external hollow point, 80 grain, it's rated at 1520 feet per second. And our Woodsman, 1130 feet per second for that 124 grain. So I'm going to use my 5-inch barrel M&P 9 and my 3.2-inch Taurus G2C to do this test. So this should be an interesting test. So I am going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I am going to do my real world simulation with every one of these shots. So we got 4 layers of sweatshirt material, followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard at the back to represent hitting back ribs, and then more clear ballistics. So this should really give us a good idea, going through a living target, how these two different rounds will perform compared to each other. So that should be very interesting. And then after that, I am going to shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up, we'll chronograph these external hollow points rated at 1520 feet per second. These are 80 grain external hollow points. So we'll do my 5-inch barrel and my 3.2-inch barrel and see how these will do. So let's see how close I get to 1520 feet per second with this external hollow point through my 5-inch barrel. 1578, 1613, 1570. So that's got some good velocity and very, very low recoil. Let's see how that same round of ammo compares to the 3.2-inch barrel. $14.73, $14.72, $14.24. Not as consistent there out of that particular barrel length. So let's move on to our Woodsman ammo here. We have our 124 grain Woodsman. I'm just doing 3-round averages here. This is 124 grain rated at 1130 feet per second. Let's see how close I get to that 1130 out of my 5-inch barrel here. $1133, 1100. 1110, so below the rated velocity out of a 5-inch barrel. That's interesting. Recoil is very, very low. It's like kind of like shooting a 38 special. All right, 3.2-inch barrel. Let's see how close we get to that 1130 feet per second. 1106, 1100. 1089. So interesting with that, there's not much velocity loss going to a shorter barrel. That's interesting. Let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how these all compare. All right, first up, we'll run our external hollow points through the 2 different barrel lengths through our real world simulation. 4 layers of sweatshirt material, followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics that represents hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum. 16 more inches of clear ballistics and another 1/4 inch MDF at the back to represent hitting back ribs, and then more clear ballistics. So external hollow point. Let's see how it does in our 5-inch barrel. Let me run one more. Kind of bizarre performance because I hit inside the gel block a couple inches, yet that bullet's laying on the outside. It hit the shelf, the back wall of that, damaged it pretty bad, and it's just laying there. So for some reason it's drifting significantly left. So I'll go more right in this block. All right. Note to self, I have to aim really far right with that ammo, at least in the gel block. So 3.2 inch barrel. Let's go take a look. All right, so both those bullets are backwards. You know what that means. How are they making, hydraulic pressure when they're, backwards? Because they're going in, they're doing pretty good damage because they're so light and moving so fast when they first hit this first 3-inch piece here. So they're delivering a lot of damage. But it looks like once they get into about the 5-6 inch mark, they start to tumble around and then straighten back out. Take a look here at our rip simulation. And yeah, the first shot, you can see it's tumbling through. The second shot there, it's not so bad. And then the shorter barrel, it's definitely tumbling more. So that's interesting. Did a lot of damage in here though, I'll say that. It's pretty good overall for the type of damage it's doing. So the one from our 5-inch barrel, we went right to give about 16.5 inches with our 5-inch barrel. With our 3.2-inch barrel, I'll say 16 inches. So very consistent there, and I actually do think it seems more consistent than the Underwood style or the Lehigh style bullets. Not too bad overall. So let's try our Woodsman and see how that does. All right, now we got our Woodsman ammo here. I do have a police bullet stop at the back in case these go all the way through. But let's see how our 9mm+P Woodsman does through our 5-inch barrel. All right. Now, let's try it through a little 3.2-inch barrel. Let's go take a look. All right, so with that 5-inch barrel, honestly, really good performance. With the 3.2-inch, not so much, but it's funny because these velocities were very, very similar with both of these. So I can guarantee you that first rib simulation, we're gonna have those bullets going through perfectly straight. And look at the second one, we underpenetrated with the 3.2-inch barrel just because it wasn't quite moving straight enough. That 5-inch barrel had, an advantage there with that little extra velocity to penetrate nice and straight. So, take a look at our overall penetration here. So, honestly, this did better than I thought it was going to do. Because when you look at Underwood's version of extreme penetrators, they generally go to about where this one went with the 3.2-inch barrel, even out of a 5-inch barrel. So that went really far. We were looking at about 34.25 inches with our 5-inch barrel shot there. Now with our 3.2-inch, we're at about 25.25. So still pretty good, but it looks like it's doing a little bit better out of the longer barrel. So not too bad performance, but the external hollow point is definitely more consistent from barrel length to barrel length, even with a big velocity spread, as where it seems like the Woodsman just, it could just have to do with my rifling and everything too. It does look like the Woodsman has potential to be a pretty good penetrating round. So, honestly, that's not bad, especially for the low recoil and velocity it had. It like I said, it felt like shooting a 38 special. So to get that out of that, that's not bad. So let's pull these out of the block. We'll take a close-up look at these bullets, and I'm going to shoot a steel and see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets. Our external hollow points here. This is the one from our 5-inch barrel, and this is the one from our 3.2-inch barrel there. So, interesting looking bullet. Got 3 different flutes there. And the one from our 3.2-inch barrel, I put a little mark on there to indicate it's from the shorter barrel. But really no change to that because of the barrel length. And copper is very solid, so you're not going to see any difference with our Woodsman either. There's the one from our 5-inch barrel, and the one from our 3.2-inch barrel. So as you can see, copper is not super dense, so 124 grain takes up like more space than a 147 grain. So it's sometimes difficult to work with copper bullets with like 9mm, because there's not a lot of case capacity and everything there. But there's our 80 grain fluted and our 124 grain Woodsman. Quite a bit of a difference there. Interesting though. So let's a close-up look at those bullets. Alright, so I'm 50 yards from the target here just because these are solid copper bullets and I don't want to take the chance of them ricocheting and hitting me. Yeah, because copper doesn't flatten against steel very well. So first up, I'm going to try our external hollow points through the 5-inch barrel and then the 3.2-inch barrel, and then we'll do our Woodsman. So here's our external hollow point, 9mm+P, 50 yards, 5-inch barrel. Alright, so I did pull one pretty low. That was just me jerking that trigger. But, very fast, very accurate overall at that distance. So, 3.2-inch barrel. See how this does. Alright. Again, I think that first one I just pulled it, and the point of impact seemed a little bit lower, because I think I missed one, and I started aiming a little bit higher, and then it seemed like I hit the rest of those anyways. So now we're going to move on to our Woodsman, and we'll see how this Woodsman does out of the 5-inch barrel here. 124 grain Woodsman. Alright, so I must have just pulled one. Didn't seem like I missed on that one. I missed because everything seemed right. Let's see how our Woodsman does. So yeah, that was me again, because I could just feel that trigger catching. It's so much different than the 5-inch barrel there. So I felt like the trigger catch and the bar catch, and then it like jerked and I missed it. But overall, I'm going to say this ammo is promising. I actually do like it better than the Underwood Extreme Defender or the Lehigh Defense type stuff. It just seems like, to me at least, with the external hollow point anyways, it seems more consistent than Extreme Defender type bullets. I've tested it way back a couple years ago, and I tested it in 380, and it just seemed like, in 380 and 9mm, it just seemed like it does pretty well overall for what it is. I just see a higher consistency and a little more damage, at least in my opinion, than what I see with like the Lehigh style bullets. And these have like a 3-pronged flute nose instead of 4, like the Lehigh bullets. But they do seem to still do the same thing where I'm finding all the bullets backwards, so they're tumbling through. But that's not a bad thing. It just means that, you know, once it destabilizes, it's going to consistently, those flutes are going to cause that shift, and it's going to tumble consistently and do a consistent amount of damage. So that's not bad overall for what I'm seeing. Now, with our Woodsman, again, this is, I would say it's better than the Extreme Penetrator. And it makes sense with the bullet design being nice. It's flat front, and that makes more sense than having just a plus pattern like the Extreme Penetrator does. Because I could see that actually catching the same way an Extreme Defender would and start to yaw and tumble, you know, more often than with something that's just a flat nose. That flat nose, button nose, is going to go in a nice straight line, and we saw that with this. So honestly, not bad performance with both of these. Out of the 5-inch barrel, perfect performance. I'm going to say both of these performed as you would want them to perform. Out of the shorter barrel, the Woodsman struggled a little bit for me. So that's interesting performance. That's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.